Hello and welcome to another Victoria 3 Developer Diary video. Last week we had the Dev Diary, the concept of war, and in it we learned that the ability to move around your units and your armies, as we've seen in every Paradox game that I have personally played. I don't know about EU2 or whatever, I didn't play them. That's no longer going to be the case. And I was, admittedly, very negative about this. I felt that it was a disappointment that we're going to lose something that I felt was kind of ubiquitous with the Paradox formula that I had come to love or like or whatever. And yeah, so I was pretty negative. I made the original video, the original Dev Diary video, which, you know, people kind of disagreed with me a little bit on that one. There was a bit of backlash on that one. Then there was the comments video that I made, looking at the community feedback to what I still maintain is like the most controversial change that the Paradox game has done. And then I also did a video talking about the response from Martin about why the mechanics and the concept were split into separate dev diaries, such that the discourse around the dev diary was more focused and easier to read feedback from, right? So that brings us to today, right? We've got another dev diary. This is the mechanics portion of the split, right? We've had the concept, now we're getting the mechanics. And we'll be able to see if the mechanics are up to a level that is justifying the removal of something quite ubiquitous with Paradox games. Let's hope that these new mechanics are good enough and that they are, you know, a worthy successor or an upgrade, if you will. But first, we've got a couple of things to do. Firstly, look at that art. Look at that art. That art is fucking beautiful. Honestly, this is my favorite one so far. Like we've seen quite a lot of art pieces for Victoria 3 so far. The loading screens, I think there are. This is my favorite one so far, showing the soldiers marching through. I believe that's the Arc de Triomphe. I love this. This is easily my favorite one. That is fucking beautiful. Compliments to the artist. Like, Jesus, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. But yeah, there's not only that, there is the Twitter teaser, which I'll pop on screen now. Tomorrow's Dev Diary will be the longest Dev Diary we've wrote so far. Probably going to need a drink for this one then. My poor throat. So we go into details on fronts and generals. Generals in particular will be very important figures in your country, so here's a little preview of a general from Kaffa in Ethiopia. So we've got Abba Sachi here, or Saki, I have no idea how you pronounce that, but I'm sure I did it perfectly. What information can we glean from this image? I would argue not a whole lot, right? Mobilizing on the general screen is interesting. He's got 5 red coats. We can promote him to, I guess, a better kind of general. What will that cost? Maybe influence, perhaps? I don't know. We can see that he has got himself an interest group. He is a part of the Rural Folk interest group. He's got a couple of traits. What these are, I don't know. And then he's got no skeletons in his closet, which is good for him. Don't know what this means either. But it doesn't matter if we don't know, because we've got the Dev Diary, and we can just go and have a look at fronts and generals. So again, we've got that lovely piece of art. Oh, I love it so much. So, let's get into this then. Hello, and welcome. Today, we'll dig into the core mechanics of land warfare, including fronts, generals, battalions, mobilization, and more. But let's take a moment to first recall the pillars of warfare in Victoria 3 from last week's Dev Diary, which should be considered a prerequisite reading to this one. So if you didn't read the last one, go read it, or watch my video on it, and then we'll come back. We'll do this one. So war is a continuation of diplomacy, meaning the diplomatic play system, basically, is a big part of that. Anything that you can get via warfare, different, territory or economic bonuses or something like that, can all be gone through diplomacy as well, right? It's not just warfare that you're going to be able to expand your territory. War is strategic, meaning we've lost the ability to command units on the field, though I would argue that that is strategic. Moving if you think of other Paradox games, say Victoria 2 for the easier example, or I guess we'll say EU4, right? Because yeah, Victoria 2 is the absolute direct predecessor to Victoria 3, but fewer people have played it, whereas I would argue that the majority have played or at least familiar with EU4, right? The moving of your armies on the map, even if it is just a single regiment, a single 1,000-block group of dudes, moving them on the map is still on the strategy layer. It's not tactical, right? I've seen a lot of people saying, that oh, you just want a grand tactics game. It's this is a stupid comment, but I've seen that quite a bit, right? It's still strategic. It's just, it's a different layer of strategic. But anyway, war is strategic. Good, cool. War is costly, meaning, going to war is going to cost you in lives and bodies and body bags and coffins and groundskeepers to dig the holes for the you know what I mean? Right? War is costly. It's going to cost you lives, infrastructure, that kind of thing. Preparation is key. If you don't have your logistics systems set up, then you're going to suffer. Logistics being a big part of the new warfare system. Preparation in the form of getting allies on board or preventing neutral countries from joining your enemy. Preparation is key. Naval matters. Navies matter. So, boats are going to be very important, though I believe next week's Dev Diary is going to be going into the naval side of the warfare system. So we'll learn more about that next week. And then war changes. The 1836 to 1936 had a lot of technological advances in it, in the theatre of war, and tactics in general were also, improved vastly. We went from a very mobile form of warfare with armies to more of a front-based system, and the things that you use in war, like tanks are invented in this time period, planes are invented in this time period, telephones are invented in this time period, which, yes, have an absolute use in warfare. Communication is key, and being able to communicate instantly rather than with, a dude on a fast horse is a huge advantage. So war changes, meaning that, the game should simulate that and make it feel like, time is pressing on. So let's move into the Dev Diary then. Before we get started, I want to point out that a few of the mechanics I'll be mentioning below are still currently under implementation in the current build. While development diary screenshots should never be taken as fully representative of the final product, this especially runs true in this case. In some cases, images will be artistic mock-ups and visual targets, and in other areas, very rough in-game screenshots that will be revised before release. The reason for this is simply because, as we've stressed previously in these Dev Diaries, Victoria 3 is a game about economies, politics, and diplomacy first and foremost. War is a very important supporting system to all those three, which tie them together. But we needed to make sure these three aspects were mature enough before we put the final touches on the military system. Furthermore, being a drastic divergence from how warfare works in all other Paradox games, these systems have required a lot of time in the oven to feel as fully baked as the others. Once we're closer to release, we'll make sure to update you on any revisions and release more finalized in-game screenshots. It's an important disclaimer, right? Some of these screenshots are work in progress. Some of them are rough, and while it would be nice if these were finalized screenshots, maybe it would put a better image in people's mind of what this system is going to look like. It's unfortunately not the case, so just bear that in mind when you're looking at screenshots. So, I want to present the concept of fronts. In Victoria 3, rather than manually moving armies around the map, you assign troops via generals to the border provinces where two combatants clash. All combat takes place on these fronts, where a victorious outcome consists of moving the front into your enemy's territory while preventing incursions into your own. Fronts are created automatically as soon as two countries begin to oppose each other in a diplomatic play, and consist of all provinces along the border of control between these two countries. Therefore, a front always has one country on either side, but it's possible for generals from several countries to be assigned to the same front. So, we can't move armies around the map, but when a diplomatic play starts, soldiers will be assigned to provinces along the border between two countries. So I guess they automatically move there, or they move there after some kind of mobilization happens. There's one thing there that really stood out to me, right? And that is, this concept of war changes, right? The early period of this period, the early time of this period, warfare was still a little bit post-Napoleonic, right? It was maneuver-based, it was armies moving around, delving deep into another country, and not being opposed across an entire front. The way I'm seeing this being written, it's more late game. It's more what I'd expect from the late game, with, we're garrisoning the entire front line, trenches along the whole area, and then, can we march into your land? Can you march into our land? Depending on, fights breaking out. It's what immediately stood out to me. Maybe I'm wrong on that. We'll keep reading. And here we have the early draft view of the Texas-Utah front. This front belongs to the Texan Revolutionary War of 1835, which is in full swing on the game's start date. 2 Texan generals are assigned to this front, Samuel Houston with an advance order and William Travis with a defense order. On Mexico's side, Jose de Romay is advancing with 10 battalions. The 4 stars on either side indicates the relative average fighting skill compared to the world's best. Here, Mexico and Texas are tied with 40 offensive, 35 defense each. From Mexico's perspective, this front has a slight advantage at the moment, and indeed one battle on this front has already been won by them. So, how do we pass that information? So, we've got armies on either side, of course. Let's have a look. Mexico and Texas are tied with 40 offensive, 35 defense each. We can see that where? I don't think we can see that, can we? Where is that information? We can see 0 out of 40 on advancement. There is 1 active battle going on. There's 10 battalions for the Mexican side. The stars are on the map rather than in the UI. Okay. And there's 8 battalions for the Texans. Yeah. I think there's 8 battalions for the Texans, 5 under one general, 3 under the other. On the other side, there's 10 battalions for the Mexicans. I don't see where we can see the amount of offense and defense here. That's all I'm seeing here is I don't see where offense and defense are on any of these screens. Where are we seeing the 40 versus 35? I don't believe I am that blind. Another thing we can see is, there's 1 battle has already gone to the Texan side. I assume this is 7 battalions went into the fight. How many they lost, how many they have at the end. So we've got the Texans started the fight with 5, they lost 2, and now they're down to 3. There's another active battle going on, the 8 versus 5. Of course, 8 isn't the entirety of the Mexican force, and 5 isn't the entirety of the Texan force. So, it's not taking the entirety of the front into a battle, which I am in favor of, right? It would certainly prevent doom stacking. Maybe it is just a percentage of the amount of frontage there is there, or a percentage of the army based on the front, something like that. Okay. But yeah, I don't see this how much offense and defense each have, and I'm not sure what this 16 is referring to. It could be how well the battle is going, the current battle, 8v10, or how well the front is going, or something along those lines. You can also see where the battle is taking place. It's taking place over here. Okay. I think the thing as well to take away from this is, with regards to this screenshot, right, this is obviously fire. This probably, like, fire is something that looks kind of shit when it is, when you have a picture of it, especially in games, right? But in motion, fire looks way better. So if this has, you know, animations involved in this, and it was less of a clean line along the bottom, this actually doesn't look too terrible, right? It doesn't look bad. All right, well, I guess we'll move on. As mentioned at the top, these visuals and all other images in this dev diary are far from complete. With many parameters left to expose, more UI layout to do, and more visual effects to add before release. Everything you're seeing today is only to give you a better idea of mechanics, but it's a heavy revision as we speak and look different on release. As such, it's not to be taken as representative of what you'll see in the final product. The health and status of your fronts is a primary indicator of how well the war is going for you. Do you have more troops on the front than your enemy does? That's pretty good. Have you advanced far into enemy territory? Great. Are soldiers there demoralized and dying in droves from attrition? Double plus ungood. Alright, how do you tell? How do I tell if I've got more? That would be the 10v8, right? So I've got more than them. That's perfect. I assume this is the front that we're seeing, and then obviously these are the little battles, right? The front in general is here. It actually looks like the Mexicans have... Oh, sorry, the Texans have 3 stars. 4 stars on either side. I guess there's 3 out of 4 stars, and is 4 stars like the best army in the world? Can't imagine that would be the case. I could see 5 stars being the best army in the world, and then Mexico having 4 stars, meaning that they're pretty good, but not the best. Okay. But I don't see how much we've advanced. That might be the 16. I mean, a battle has been won by Mexico, so I would assume there are some ramifications of that battle. Do we see if our soldiers are demoralized? Probably just not on the front screen. You might actually have to go into the army screen for that, I would imagine. Okay. In a large endgame conflict, you might have hundreds of thousands and possibly even millions of soldiers in active service, which is a lot to keep track of. The number of active fronts, however, is likely to be much more manageable. The design philosophy here is the same with the economic pop model. Our aim is to make the game playable and well-paced without requiring frequent pausing on every scale, while retaining the detail and integrity of the pop simulation. For warfare, the scale ranges from small border skirmish between minor nations in single player to a massive multiplayer world war featuring every great power. Using the front system, we can account for every individual serviceman and officer in meticulous detail, while giving the player a high-level strategic interface to monitor and manipulate. Much like with the economic interface of buildings or the political interface of interest groups, from this front view you can drill down through your generals all the way to the individual pops and actually do the fighting if you want to. So we're back to Texas here. After a particularly punishing battle, the Texan barracks are desperately trying to recruit replacements to send to the front. So, the barracks here has information workforce modifiers just like the other buildings do. Their workforce has almost 7,000 employees with a struggling standard of living. Okay. The workforce is officers, and we can see here these, I'm pretty sure, yeah, these are all officers. The 319 plus 29 is all officers here. how many Dixies are employed as officers, how many Mexicans are employed as officers, and their own individual standard of living, how politically active they are. Okay, and then we can see servicemen as well. I don't know if it's all of them. Maybe there's a scroll bar that can go further down. But all we can see here is 30,000 Dixie Protestant servicemen total, of which 6,000 are employed. Yeah, there's definitely more because 647 out of 662. So there's going to be another group down the bottom. Is this? I think this is potential employees. There's a potential of 1,500. There's a potential of 116. There's a potential of 30,000. So I guess there's plenty of reinforcements that can come to the front because you'll be able to get this 30,000 potentially. I think that's how it works. But yeah, this screen looks a bit easier to parse, I guess. All right. Generals are characters who command servicemen and officers into battle on fronts. Every country will start the game with one or a few generals, many of them straight out of the history books, and can recruit more as needed. Generals are recruited from strategic regions. Okay, so those are important for warfare. They gain command of as many locally available troops in that region as their command limit allows. So the command limit being the image we see on some of the earlier screenshots in the outliner. Generally, we've seen it be out of 10. Okay. Command limit is determined by the rank, which ranges from 1 star to 5 star. If 1 star is 10 troops, 5 star 50 troops, or maybe it scales a bit better than that. Like 10 goes up to 25, goes up to 50, goes up to 100, goes up to 200, something like that maybe. Like a 5-star general would be like, field marshal kind of thing. If several generals are headquartered in the same strategic region, the troops are split up between them, proportional to the command limit as well. Military operations can be complex to manage, and to model this, every general costs a certain amount of bureaucracy to maintain. You can promote generals freely, but while high-ranking generals can effectively command more troops, they also cost more bureaucracy. I hope it's not going to be like in Hearts of Iron, where the meta, I think the meta, I don't know Hearts of Iron that much, was to get a field marshal to be able to command more troops and just have everyone under the same field marshal. Was that the meta? I don't actually know, but I have heard, or I believe I remember that being the case. That also depends on the stats of said general, I guess. You can promote generals freely. Makes sense. You are the spirit of the country. You're able to dictate that kind of thing. But it doesn't make them better, right? It doesn't make their stats better. They might still be a really bad general, but they've just been promoted up the ranks because of political corruption or something. And you being the deciding factor in that political corruption. We may end up even seeing things like the Armed Forces Interest Group is demanding that you promote this general that is a part of their interest group. That could be totally a thing. I could see that being a thing. Like other characters, such as heads of state and interest group leaders, generals have a set of traits that determine their abilities and weaknesses. Admirals, their naval counterparts, work the same way. These traits determine everything about how the characters function and what bonuses and penalties they confer onto their troops, their front, and the battles they participate in. All characters have a personality trait, which with different effects depending on what role they fill. For example, a cruel general might cause more deaths among enemy casualties, leaving fewer enemy pops to recover through battlefield medicine or return home as dependents, while a charismatic general might keep the troops' morale high even when supplies run short. Okay, that's nice. There's, having different personality traits causing different effects on the combat itself. Especially like the cruel general one. It's interesting. Characters also gain skill traits, which are unique to their role. Generals might develop skills like Woodland Terrain Expert that increases their troops' efficiency when fighting in forest or jungle, Engineer that increases their troops' defense. Freshly recruited generals start with one of these, but can gain more as they age and gain experience. Many skill traits have several tiers as well, so generals that remain active across many campaigns may deepen their abilities over time. Alright, I kind of like that, you know. Generals gaining traits based on what they're doing. The traits having different tiers as well, that's kind of cool. Yeah, those things are... Like, in AU4, generals have traits as well. But it's real bad. It's not good. Yeah. They get a randomly assigned trait based on RNG, I guess. And that's it. It's not terribly interesting. Whereas this looks way more interesting. Characters may also gain conditions due to events or simply the passage of time. These often affect the character's health, but may also influence their popularity or ability to carry out their basic duties. Shell-shocked is a classic example of a condition your general might gain. Okay. Yeah, traits are cool. This fellow, whose name I refuse to write out, has a direct personality, prefers to command troops in open terrain, is an expert surveyor of the battlefield. He's also become wounded, probably as a result of some recent skirmish. So these are these. So he is direct personality. I imagine is probably this one. Likes open terrain, expert surveyor, wounded. He's a member of the industrialists. And I guess he's either level 3 or level 2. Do we promote to what this is, or is this what he is, and then you can promote him? I'd kind of prefer him to be level 3, and then you can promote him. Also, I love this. Is that maybe favoriting the general? To put him in the outliner? I would like that very much. And it's Charles Marie Napoleon de Beaufort Hautepole. De Hautepole, whatever. Bleeding French names, alright? Okay. Moving on again. Like all characters, generals and admirals are also aligned with an interest group, which is often, but not always, the armed forces. For heads of state and interest group leaders, the impact of this political allegiance is obvious. But why, you may ask, would this matter for generals and admirals? In addition to industrialization and revolutions, the 19th century was also known for its revolving door between military and political office. Often given assignments far from the capital with very limited communications, generals and admirals were given access to enormous man and firepower and sent off with little possibility of oversight to see to the nation's best interests. This autonomy not only granted them considerable geopolitical power while in the field, but also made them extremely popular figures once returning home from a successful campaign. As such, in Victoria 3, decisions on who to recruit, promote, and retire, which should ideally be based on meritocratic concerns, sometimes have to be tempered by concerns for internal power balance and stability due to the impact generals can have on the country's interest groups. Alright, that's interesting and cool, I like that. Yeah, no, I can't think of anything wrong with any of that. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I was saying before about, you know, the interest groups might want you to promote a certain general. It's very different to in Victoria 2, where your generals were more to do with their stats, right? You didn't really give a shit about who they were. And I do like the idea that they're bringing in this character flavor to Victoria 3. It's obviously it's not making Vicky into CK Vicky, right? That's not the case at all. But bringing some character into the game is great. It's also like, if I was to imagine a Europa Universalis 5, it would also be bringing in more character elements. Like, that is one of the big things that I would have done with that game. So, if I was more into Vicky 2, then I probably would have theorized or desired more character elements in Vicky 3. And, you know, that makes sense to me, and I kind of like that that's occurring. That's good. That's good. The character also contributes directly to their interest group's political strength, which, as we know, determines their clout. The amount provided is dependent on their rank, so granting a promotion to a promising young general will also increase the influence of their interest group wields. That's cool. That's cool. No wonder the interest group would want you to promote them, because they get more clout out of it. Perfect. Second, if a general is becoming a little bit too big for their boots, or perhaps crippled by adverse conditions, like that in 79-year-old Fossil, who just won't leave active service despite senility. Senility? I don't actually know how you pronounce that. I mean, senile. Senility? That's probably wrong. Senility? I don't fucking know. And various ailments, and you want to force them into retirement so someone else can take command of their troops, their interest group's approval will be impacted. Understandably so, since you just robbed them of some political power. Third, and most important, if an interest group becomes revolutionary, which would be the subject of another dev diary, their generals and admirals will take up against you. If you've put all your eggs in the basket of some farmer's boy who turned out to be a strategic genius and you suffer an agrarian uprising, you may end up fighting a rebellion against that same brilliant commander using fresh recruits still wet behind the ears. Alright, cool. Also, this looks... Oh, that looks so good. That looks so good. Commanders can also be the focal points of special events, caused either of their own volition or by a situation you've put them in. Your decisions in these events may end up affecting your country in any number of ways. So we've got General Matvey Krapovitsky has offered to help increase the approval of the armed forces for a small increase in their budget. Let me talk with them. I have some influence. A few friendly words here and there could make all the difference. Of course, this traveling would cost me quite a bit. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. That's really nice. Like the visuals here are so nice as well. I love this. This is super nice. All right, cool. Lovely. All right, so combat style, right? Combat things here. Both generals and admirals can be given orders, which they're obliged to try to carry out. We'll go over admiral orders next week. So the orders you can give generals are quite straightforward. You can have them stand by. The general returns home from their current front, dispersing their troops into their home region's garrison forces to slow down any enemy incursions. We've got the advance front. The general gathers their troops, moves to the target front, and tries to advance it by launching attacks at the enemy. And then defend front, like advance front, except the general never advances, instead focusing only on intercepting and repelling enemy forces. Okay. What happens if it's like, I'll defend front and you and my enemy defends front? Is there never going to be any attacks? Is there never going to be any battles? Who knows? These orders may end up executed in different ways depending on the general's traits, resulting in different troop compositions and battle conditions during the operations. For example, a reckless general may provide his battalions with increased offense during advances, but fewer of his casualties taken will recover after the battle. Further, his recklessness may lead to making a risky maneuver during a battle, which could prove a brilliant or catastrophic move. Okay, this sounds like a mechanic. A risky maneuver sounds like a mechanic that might end up happening and be brilliant or awful. Okay. And then maybe somebody who is reckless does more of these? Who knows? If you want to play it safer, you could assign a cautious but well-supplied general to a front line, even though that may be less prestigious. Generals charged with advancing a front will favour marching towards and conquering states marked as war goals, but their route there may be more or less circuitous, depending on how the war is progressing, and possibly other factors such as the local terrain. Other such designated priority targets which the player could set themselves to alter the flow of battle is a feature we're looking at adding to represent strategies and events such as the General Sherman's March to the Sea. It's not currently in the game, but it's something we think would add an interesting dimension to the strategic gameplay, so something like this will likely to make its way in sooner or later. Yeah, I mean, definitely being able to designate a priority target, I think, is essential. Because, right, while this does sound interesting, like everything I've written I've written none of this, everything I've read so far sounds interesting. But it comes back to something I read a lot from the disagrees, let's say, the anti-crackpots, regarding this new war system. And that is that anything that they were thinking of what this was is going to be a reduction in skill expression. Being able to affect warfare through your own individual skill. is something that was taken away with the removal of being able to directly control armies. Having something to replace that, some skill expression in the game, in this new war system is important. And I think one of those ways that you can express some skill is being able to designate the correct targets, right? Putting just a priority target on the enemy's capital and then set and forget and let go, that's not really interesting. But if you can, as the player, deduce that many of the enemy's supplies are coming through a key city that is maybe a railroad hub, something like that, being able to identify that and set it as a target and put enough eggs in a single basket to be able to get that, which would, while doing so, maybe the rest of your front is suffering for it. But if this one area manages to win and secure that target, then it relieves pressure on the rest, and that might be some form of skill expression there. I think this new war system has to avoid a deadly pitfall, and that is being too passive. There needs to be active elements for the player to control, I think is essential. Alright, but yeah, we got, hopefully we get the designated priority targets in, because that would be one way of doing so. Or going some way. I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. It needs more than that. Fronts targeted to advance or defend can also be a front belonging to a co-belligerent, as long as you can reach it by land or sea. For example, if Prussia supports Finland in a war of independence against Russia, then they are on the right side of history, and thank you, Prussians. To help defend... Alright, let's start again. Fuck that. Yeah, Prussia supporting Finland's a great thing. They could send 1 or 2 generals to advance their own front against Russia, and another to defend the Finnish-Russian front, ensuring Finland can stay in the war for as long as possible while simultaneously striking at Russia's own war support. To do so, it needs to send its troops helping Finland across the Baltic, which will require naval support. We'll learn more about that in the next week's Dev Diary. Okay. So yeah, being able to assign your generals to an ally's front is good. That's what we want to see as well. It would be very boring if you were not able to do that. I also think being able to reach it by land or sea, you're going to maybe run into some areas where maybe a landlocked country, of which there's probably fairly few of them at this point. But maybe a landlocked country wants to go and help out their ally. They're going to need to get military access through another power, and we've seen that in one of the earlier dev diaries where you can demand access, or violating their national sovereignty. That could totally be a thing. Alright, moving on. Generals cannot be given orders unless they are mobilizing. In peacetime, all generals will be demobilized, doing whatever it is 19th century generals do in peacetime. Probably drink copious amounts of wine, have sordid affairs, and plot against their governments. While their troops are on standby doing occasional drills to keep readiness up. As soon as a diplomatic play starts, and for as long as the country is at war after that, players have the option to mobilize any and all of their generals, which will increase the consumption of military buildings, guns, ammo, artillery, etc., and start the process of getting that general's troops ready for frontline action. The speed by which troops are readied is dependent on the infrastructure in their local state. So high infrastructure states can mobilize many more troops quickly, while low infrastructure rural states might take much longer to gather and organize a lot of manpower. Alright, so mobilization isn't just a button where you then implement conscription and all your peasants start, fighting for you. It is a key part of warfare. It is, you can't make orders for your generals unless they're mobilizing. I mean, the orders as well, I guess. If we go back up, I guess they're on standby at the beginning. General returns home from their current front, dispersing their troops to their home region's garrison forces to slow down any incursions. So If they're not mobilized, I guess they're on this. And then once they're mobilized, you'll be able to give them these two. So demobilized, I guess they're not on the front. Alright, so that's interesting as well, right? Because if you have a diplomatic play starting, that's when you can start mobilizing. But if you start mobilizing as soon as the diplomatic play starts, that's a diplomatic action, right? Other countries may make note of that and be, more or less in favor of you because of that, and maybe not back you because of that. They maybe think you're a bit of a warmonger, that kind of thing. And also, you start, consuming military buildings, military goods, faster when you're mobilized. So how much mobilization do you do is an interesting conundrum that you're going to have to think about. So, when you choose to start mobilizing and how many generals and battalions you choose to mobilize will matter a lot to your initial successes in the war. And as everyone knows, the first few battles could well prove decisive if the other party is taken by surprise. The magnitude of mobilization becomes immediately visible to the other participants in a diplomatic play as soon as the decision is taken. Choosing to mobilize big and early in the diplomatic play tells the other participant two things. One, you're serious, and two, you're hedging your bets that this won't end peacefully. This in turn can trigger a cascade of mobilizations, and before you know it, a peaceful solution is no longer on the table. That's cool. That's really cool. I mean, that harkens back to the what we were saying before with, war is a continuation of diplomacy. The war starts in the diplomatic play phase, and having, warfare escalate on this scale because, somebody decided to start mobilizing and now, peace ain't possible. That's really awesome. I actually really, really like that system. That's pretty cool. Choosing to hold off on mobilization until late means you save precious money and lives until it's needed, but may cost you the war if that's what it comes down to. So it's a choice, and maybe the right choice is not clear, and it's not the same choice every time. I like it. Mobilized generals cannot be demobilized until the war is over. Once you've committed your troops to the war, they expect to be in the field and well supplied until a peace is signed. If getting what you want out of a war takes a long time, your expenses may eventually begin to exceed the value of the potential prize. So here we have an in-progress artistic mock-up of an army overview, listing all your generals with shortcut actions. In this case, only General Longname has been mobilized, or activated, preparing his men to go to the front at the expense of increased goods consumption and attrition. Okay. This is actually a really long screenshot. I can't get it all in one screen. Alright, so... We have the army here. There are no... Okay, so what we can see here is mobilization in the Victoria 2 sense is now called conscription. And mobilization in Victoria 3 is more akin to just getting your armies where they need to be. The maneuver phase of, I need to move my units to the front. Do I like this? Yeah? I kind of want to say yeah. Because definitely as soon as I saw that mobilization wasn't the mobilization that we had always known from Victoria 2, I was a little bit worried. But, conscripts are a thing. So it's not... We're not losing mobilization, right? Because initially I was like, oh, they're taking away mobilization, or, they're calling mobilization something else, by which case they would be taking away the other kind, the Victoria 2 kind, but that's not the case. So that's cool. We can also see on this shot, we can see our generals. We can activate them here. We can, say, mobilize all of them at once. We can activate them. We've already activated a person with very long name who is defending in South Russia headquarters. He's on the defense action. So what can we see here? He's got 0 out of 50 troops? Battalions? He's preparing his men, maybe. Also, I like that John Doe here has personality trait, condition, skill trait, and some other skill trait. And very, very natural traits there. Yeah, no, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. This screen looks okay. And you can recruit new generals there as well. Alright. Your land army is composed of battalions. Naturally. Perfect. Okay, we've got a new name for the units, I guess, which are groups of 1,000 workforce with servicemen or of officer professions. Like all other pops, these work in buildings, in this case either barracks or conscription centres. The difference between these are that barracks are constructed manually and house the country's standing army, which are considered permanent troops, while conscription centres are activated as needed during a diplomatic play or war and recruit civilians into temporary military service. In addition, barracks have a wider selection of production methods to choose from, particularly high-tech late-game production methods. How your army is divided between professional and conscripted soldiers depends on your army model law, which we'll cover in more detail in a few weeks. Alright. So production methods in the barracks. Is that going to be like, this barracks' production method is to train infantry? This barracks production method is to train dragoons. This barracks production method is to train artillery. That kind of thing. Is that what we're seeing here? We need to know more of the production methods. Alright, here. The production methods in these two buildings work like other production methods do. They employ pops of certain professions and consume goods to provide a set of effects. In this case, they employ servicemen and officers in proportions depending on your organization style, consume a number of military goods, and in return provide battalions with different combat statistics, such as offense and defense. Okay. I would like to know what kind of production methods we have, but alright. Since military buildings work according to the same logic as other buildings, such as factories and plantations, all core mechanics such as market access, goods shortage, qualifications, etc. apply to them in exactly the same way. If one of your barracks battalions are supported by armoured divisions but you cannot supply it with enough tanks, recruitment will slow down to painful levels and both offense and defense will suffer. If you don't have enough qualifying officers, the number of battalions the building can actually create will be throttled. Just because you have researched a new type of artillery piece or a more efficient way of organising your army doesn't mean you'll be ready to modernise straight away. And if your local infrastructure suffers, the acquisition cost for the requisite goods couldn't reach astronomical levels. Alright. So I'm thinking things like in Victoria 2, as soon as you researched gas attack, all of your troops, if they were currently involved in the war, would instantly get the plus, I think it's 5, modifier for having gas attack. But that doesn't seem to be the case here, right? There's going to be, just because you've researched gas attack, doesn't mean you'll be able to modernize straight away, right? So that's what I'm kind of hoping, that it's going to be like a rollout kind of thing, perhaps. And yeah, different building effects, shortage of goods and all that kind of thing is going to matter as well. Market access, I mean, the logistics of getting the goods where they need to be. All right. All right, I like it. Upgrades to production methods in military buildings take considerable time to take effect. While any goods consumption changes happen immediately, improvements to combat effectiveness take some time to realize. Keeping military spending low during peacetime by reverting your military to pre-Napoleonic warfare doctrines might be pleasant for your treasury, but gets less great for both your war readiness and prestige, the latter of which is directly impacted both by how large and how advanced your army is. Alright, that's a good to know, because if it was a case of it being absolutely instant, then just gotta make my army crap again because I'm not using it. That'd be a terrible idea. We have here an in-progress artist mock-up of a battalion or garrison focused list. Illustrations are selected for a collection of similar battalions based on dominant battalion culture, defined by the pops in the military building, and the tech level, defined by the production methods used in the military building. Collections can be expanded to display the full list. From there, the player can click through from a given battalion in the military building supporting it. So we've got the Iberian headquarters has Felix Aguirre, the general, with his troops. And I guess these are the production methods. We've got infantry, artillery, cannons, no officers, no medical staff. Alright, I assume that's no officers. I can't imagine that would be the case, though. And he's idle. This guy's defending on the Iberian front. We've got the 1st Catalonia Battalion with a general with 100 of that and 100 of walls and 950 out of 1,000 families. I don't know. We just need to know what all of the things are the tooltips would show us. Because wait, this is a battalion, right? The battalion is 1,000 men. So maybe this is 950 out of 1,000. Maybe that is how many active servicemen are in it. That's taken a little bit of attrition, perhaps. Why is there a bar going halfway over here? What is the significance of this? What? 100? What is this 100 of? 100 fortifications? 950 soldiers? I don't know. All this leads us to battles. Advancing generals will eventually gather enough troops to launch an attack into one of the enemy-controlled provinces along the front, which will be intercepted by defending troops and possibly an enemy general. In short, a battle then takes place over some number of days until one force has taken enough casualties and morale damage to retreat. We'll go over in more detail how battles play out in a future diary. But suffice to say now that a bunch of battalions go in, along with a number of different combat-related stats and conditions, some of them related to the general and their troops, others due to conditions like province terrain and chance. If the advancing side wins, they capture a number of provinces depending on how large their win was, what sort of technology they use, how dispersed or concentrated the enemy forces are in their region, and so on. If the defending side wins, they repel the advances and will likely be able to launch their counterattack at a nice advantage. Alright, so what happens if both are defending? Are they just going to be staring at each other across the front? Is that what we're saying here? I do like the idea that, you know, if you win a battle, then you gain some territory. You know, you advance your front, and depending on how large your win was, is how much of that territory you take. That is very interesting. But again, there's like, how much skill expression is there going to be in this system? Because it doesn't look like much. There's some there, but it doesn't look like much. An item of note here is that just because one general might command 100 battalions while the other side's general might only command 20, does not mean every battle outcome on this front is predetermined. A single front can cover a large stretch of land, and just because a general with 100 battalions is on a front does not mean they travel with 100,000 individuals in their encampment. Those battalions are considered to be spread out, simultaneously planning their next advance while intercepting enemy advances, and as such the force size in each of the battles can bring to bear may vary. Furthermore, battalions under the command of other friendly generals on the same front may be temporarily borrowed for a certain battle, and even battalions without mobilized generals, considered part of the region's garrison, can be used to defend against incursions. However, battalions are not under the direct command of the general in charge of the battle do not gain the benefit of his traits. Okay, so that means there is some kind of asymmetry there, right? Just because you're outnumbered doesn't mean you're going to lose. What I'm thinking here is, say, France is at war with Belgium and Germany. France has a front going, you know, from the coastline all the way to Switzerland because of that war. Maybe they have one general commanding 150 battalions along that front. Well, the Belgians only have 20. But the front that the Belgians have versus the front that the French have is very, very different. So a concentration of those 20 on just the Belgian front may be higher than what the French have in that area. I can see that being the case. That's interesting. This variable sizing of battles, particularly when combined with mobilization costs, counteracts the otherwise dominant strategy of doom stacking. It's not really dominant in Victoria 2, but okay. And makes, well, not in the late game at least, and makes wars feel more like a tug of war than a race. Each side can choose to either try to gain marginal advantage over the other on the cheap, or spare no expense to increase their chances for an expedient victory, with any position on the spectrum being a valid option in different situations. We'll get deeper into some of the combat statistics that go into resolving a battle in a few weeks when we explore military buildings in more detail. We'll talk more about how battles play out and look on the map in a diary further little down the line. We're anxious to show them to you, but need to give these visuals a little more attention first. It's fair. So that's land warfare in a nutshell. In the 2 upcoming dev diaries, we'll go over the major role that navies play in the system, as well as the economic and human costs of the war, which are closely interrelated. For now, I want to close by saying that we appreciate your patience in waiting for details on warfare mechanics. The reasons why we've chosen to diverge so far from the classic grand strategy game military formula would be hard to grasp until you'd seen the various different economic, political, and diplomatic systems function. So next week, you've got naval warfare mechanics being shown. And that's it for this one. God, yeah, no, that's a long freaking dev diary. That's an hour that I've been talking now. And what do I think? What do I think? That's a good bloody question. That is a bloody good question, because I don't know. I truly don't know. Like, this sounds interesting, right? It sounds very interesting. Everything here sounds interesting. There is... I'm pretty sure this could be fun, right? I just worry that there is not enough of a... I keep using this term because it's a good term. Skill expression. How much skill expression is there in Warfare in Victoria 3? Is a very... Is there going to be a case where, say we've got a multiplayer campaign going on, and one player is... Two countries are equal, but the players of those countries are different, right? That one is better than the other, and not by much, but by a little bit. We've got, say, France and Germany, right? And the French player is better, he's built up his country better, he's got a better economy, he's got more troops, that kind of thing. What happens if the German player has to drop out for a week, and there is a substitute player to jump in, and the substitute player is a very, very good Victoria 3 player? Militarily, economically, all that kind of thing. He's very, very, very good. Is his increased skill going to make up for the fact that he's now got a weaker country? Because in Victoria 2, that could totally be the case. In EU4, that is totally the case. Skill expression is very prevalent in those games in Warfare. Are we going to have the same, or at least some level of skill expression available in Victoria 3? I think there needs to be. Like I say, I'm liking things that I'm seeing. I'm not... Like, this system does seem like... If this wasn't Paradox and this was completely separate company out, or this is my first ever Paradox game, or something along those lines, I'd be like, yeah, no, this war system looks awesome. It's only because I've seen other Paradox games and the militaries in them that I have that hesitation. And I'm not even saying here that I think EU4's combat is any good. Like, I'm not. Because, I mean, it's not very historically accurate. Battles lasting weeks and weeks and weeks is... I mean, no. They are not historically accurate in the slightest, but they are fun. And I know there's a lot of people who will disagree with me on that one. They'll think that they don't enjoy microing around troops. And therefore, this is objectively better because it's removing something that they don't like. it's something I'm going to have to read the dev diary a couple more times before I finalize my opinion on it, because right now I don't know what to think. Like I say, I like what I'm seeing here. I really do. I'm just worried that there is not enough input from the player. And I hope we get more input from the player. But anyway, those are my thoughts. They're not... My thoughts are not finalized. They're in flux. So let me know what your thoughts are, because that might help me. Please do leave them in the comment section below. And also, when you do leave your comment in the comment section below, please also say whether you were for or against last week's dev diary. Whether you are pro or anti-change, right? Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on this and what position you were in prior, because that is important. If you were anti-change, that you didn't like the new direction, you didn't like that we're losing troop maneuvering, but you like this system, I would love to hear from you. If you were pro-change and you don't like this system, I would love to hear from you. And honestly, everything in between as well. If you are anti-change and you don't like this, or if you're pro-change and you do like this, let me know in the comment section below. I want to know everyone's thoughts. But yeah, that's basic. That's all I got. That's all I got for you today. War. What is it good for? Well, if you win, you get to march through the Arc de Triomphe and look like an absolute Chad. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you in a few days for the community response video. I hope you join me for that one. Until then, bye-bye.